Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Hannah, and I work for an organization called the Idaho Conservation League. Idaho Conservation League is an organization that works really, really hard to protect Idaho's environment. So what does that mean? That means that we work hard to protect the water that people drink, that animals drink, and that fish love to swim in. We protect the air that everybody breathes, and we also protect the landscapes that we love to play in, whether it's the rivers or the mountains or the deserts or the forests. We protect Idaho's beautiful natural landscapes for people and for the animals that call those places home. So today I'm going to take you on a journey. We're going to learn all about Idaho's special fish, the salmon. We're going to follow Idaho salmon on their journey, on their migration journey, and learn why salmon are an endangered species and why they're really important to the people and the landscapes and the environment of Idaho. Before we take our journey, let's learn about why salmon are so important to Idaho. So here's a picture of a salmon. I'm going to move my little box up here so you can still see me, but you can see the picture too. So this is what a salmon looks like. This is a sockeye salmon. You can see it's red, and you can see there's a couple of its friends behind it. Salmon are really important to people. They're really important to people mostly because they're super yummy to eat. Native Americans like the Nez Perce tribe and the Shoshone-Bannock have been fishing for salmon for thousands of years, and lots of people make their living fishing for salmon. Fishing for salmon is a really fun, really exciting, and really special activity that brings lots of different people together. People really love salmon, but people aren't the only animal that loves salmon. Orca whales also love salmon, as you can see here. I'm going to make my box a little bit smaller so you can see the picture a little bit better. But you can see here's an orca whale out in the ocean who is hunting and chomping on a salmon swimming out in the ocean. So orca whales are one of the animals that also really likes to eat salmon. Another one is the bear. Here's a picture of a bear chomping on a salmon and fishing for salmon. You might be wondering though, well, if orcas are in the ocean and bears are in the mountains, how can a salmon be both in the ocean and also in the mountains? Well, to find out the answer, let's take a journey and learn about the life cycle of the salmon. Salmon begin their lives as little orange eggs in freshwater rivers high up in the mountains, including high up in the mountains in Idaho. The eggs are usually hidden under rocks for protection. When salmon hatch, the baby fish grow up to be a little bit bigger and they start to eat. They start off right when they hatch as this creature here. I'm going to make a little circle so you can see. So here is the alevin of the salmon. This is right when it hatches, and you can see it has a little pouch attached to it. That's like having a lunchbox attached to your leg. So it can just kind of munch on that little sack, and that's what it eats. Then it grows up to be a little bit bigger and it becomes a fry. Oops. And so the fry is a little bit bigger, it gets a little bit braver, and then the fry swims out from under the rocks and ventures out into the water of the stream, and they eat little bugs. And so they're just a little bit bigger than the alevin. When they get big enough, a little bit longer than a crayon, the salmon becomes a teenager. And the teenager salmon is called a smolt. These smolts are in for a really, really big transformation or a change. This is when things get a little bit exciting. The salmon actually start swimming downstream. They are born up in the high mountain lakes as eggs, and then they grow up a little bit there. But then to get really big, to become grown-ups, they have to swim all the way downstream. And so here's a photo of smolts they're still pretty much a baby, but they're a little bit more like a teenager. they are swimming all the way downstream. In Idaho, the smolts swim all the way down the Salmon River, all the way down the Snake River, and then all the way down a river called the Columbia River until they reach the ocean. So here is a good map of it. It's kind of hard to see, but this big red circle right here shows you all the different mountain streams and rivers that salmon are born in Idaho. So here is where Ketchum is and Haley is, and the Wood River Valley is right around here. And so all the salmon are in these streams, these rivers on the map, and they swim all the way down to the Oregon and Washington border, and they swim down this river and down this river until they get to the ocean. And so this arrow shows that they're swimming from the mountains all the way to the ocean. Here is where the river meets the ocean. So here's the Pacific Ocean right here, and this map shows the river going into the ocean. And this is a really important place for the salmon. Here, the fresh water of the river meets the salt water of the ocean, and this is where the smolt, that teenage salmon, transforms from a river fish into an ocean fish and swims way out into the big blue ocean to get big and become an adult. Out in the ocean, the salmon grows up and becomes an adult. Different kinds of salmon spend different times of year in the ocean, and some of them spend many, many years in the ocean, maybe 7 years or 8 years. Some of them only spend a year or 2 in the ocean. And what they do when they're in the ocean is they swim around, they eat a lot of really yummy seafood, and they grow really, really, really big. Some of them, a lot of them, swim all the way up to Alaska. And so this is another map I wanted to show you. So this is, again, Idaho right here, and the salmon swim out to the ocean. And then once they're in the ocean, they swim all the way up to Alaska, and they do big circles in the ocean, and they swim all the way around, getting really big and absorbing all the nutrients, all the salt water and all the other nutrients in the ocean. And then after getting really big in the ocean, salmon start to get a little bit homesick. Have any of you been homesick? You want to go home? Well, salmon get homesick, and they start to miss Idaho. They're all the way up in Alaska in the cold water, and they start to miss where they grew up, the little streams out in the mountains of Idaho that they were born in. And so they decide to go back. They swim back to the mouth of the Columbia River, and they decide to go upstream. And so this is a really, really hard part of their life. They have a really hard journey ahead. This part of their life is called the spawning migration, or where they travel to lay their eggs. The salmon stop eating once they get back to the river and start swimming upstream. So it would be like if you or I walked all the way from the ocean, up the riverbank, all the way to Idaho. I'll show you a map again. So if you or I walked all the way from the Pacific Ocean right here, all the way back up to Idaho, like 1,000 miles or more, hundreds of miles, almost 1,000 miles, without eating anything. That's what the salmon do. They stop eating, and then they swim up over waterfalls, upstream, and all the way to Idaho. And it's pretty amazing that they are able to swim all the way from the ocean back up into the mountains. And then finally, after swimming all the way back to Idaho, salmon spawn. They lay their eggs in the exact same spot, in the same gravel bed that they were born when they were little eggs. And then the salmon die up in Idaho, and their bodies disintegrate, and the ocean, or the river and the forest absorbs all the nutrients that the salmon brought back with them from the ocean. And so here's a pair of salmon. I'm going to show you, and I'll move my screen a little bit. So here's a pair of salmon. They look kind of beat up a little bit, right? They look like they've worked really hard, because they swim all the way from the ocean up to the Idaho rivers and mountains. And so then they lay their eggs and they die right away. And it's very exciting. And so then the eggs stay safe in the gravel all winter until they hatch and the life cycle starts all over again. And so that is the life cycle of the salmon, from the ocean or from the rivers to the oceans and back again. Now we're coming to a little bit of a sad part of our story. You see, the salmon are what we call an endangered species. And an endangered species are an animal or a plant that is in danger of dying out. There used to be a lot of salmon in Idaho, thousands, even millions. But over the years, humans started to do things that threatened the salmon. So here's some more salmon, a good picture of the salmon. So like I said before, humans have always fished for salmon, but it's important that humans don't take too many fish. Humans have been taking too many salmon sometimes, and that means there's less for the orcas and less for the bears, and they all get hungry. And so when humans fish for salmon and take too many, then there's not enough salmon for everybody to share. Secondly, salmon live in a lot of different places. They live in rivers, they live in little streams, and they live in the ocean. All of those places are considered salmon habitat or salmon home, right? So when the ocean gets too warm or too cold, or the rivers get dirty, or they change too much because of things that humans do, salmon can't live there anymore, and they have nowhere else to go. And so when their homes get destroyed or polluted or otherwise change too much for them to live there, then the salmon don't have anywhere to live, and then there's less salmon, and it's really sad. Third, humans in the past built walls in the river called dams. And so here's a picture of a dam. This is one of the dams that the salmon in Idaho have to go through on their way down to the ocean and also on their way back up from the ocean to the river. So dams are important for a lot of reasons. They can provide electricity to cities and towns, but they also block salmon from getting to the ocean. When they are little smolts, when they're little crayon size, they have to swim all the way and navigate these dams. And they also block the salmon from getting back from the ocean up to the rivers and mountains where they lay their eggs. And so they're a really big barrier. What would you do, you think, if there was a really, really big wall on the road between you, your home, and your school? It would be so hard to get from home to school and back again. And it would be really, really stressful if you had to navigate a big wall and figure out how to get around it and figure out how to get through all the traffic that got backed up behind the wall every time you had to go to school. And so I want to say that there are lots of dams on the rivers between Idaho and the ocean, and they interfere with the salmon life cycle, and this makes salmon endangered. So here's another map I wanted to show you of all the dams. So all of these red dots are dams on the way to the ocean. Again, the salmon are born up here on this side of the screen in Idaho. ID means Idaho. And then they have to swim all the way down the Snake River, past these 4 dams, these 4 big red dots, and then they go into the Columbia River and they swim past these 4 dams, and then they finally get to the ocean. And then when they swim around the ocean, decide they're homesick and want to come back, they have to turn around and swim up and bypass these dams yet again. And so it's a big problem for the fish, and it's been really threatening to them. Even though it's really sad that salmon are endangered, and it's scary to think what would happen if salmon died out. I'm really grateful and I'm really inspired by salmon. I think they're a really special Idaho fish that loves the mountains and the oceans, and I love salmon, and that's why it's my job to protect them. Thank you so much for learning about Idaho salmon with me today, and I hope you have a really great day. Thanks so much. Be safe, everybody.